everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Hey, welcome to StrataLife as part of Experts on Call right here on CL 650. My name's Zach Spencer, and Drew Grout joins us here from Key Pacific Property Management. Gordon Lai, we just heard in the last segment. He's Client Executive Vice President, CMW Insurance, and Randy Gordon, Technician at Ashton Service Group. Now, Randy, you are a specialist in the heating of a strata building, right? Heating and hot water, right?
Heating and hot water.
So
yes.
What you typically do is, from what I understand, is you're looking after the maintenance of that system for the building, which is vital. Everybody wants a hot shower in the morning, and we need heat in the winter, right?
Absolutely.
So how often do you typically go to a building?
Well, we usually recommend quarterly maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some buildings have different needs,
Mm-hmm.
and we tailor it to the building. But normally speaking, quarterly maintenance is how it's done.
So what do you do when you go for that quarterly maintenance visit typically?
Typically, well, we go through there. We get to the building and we go through the entire mechanical system. We look at all the equipment, top to bottom. We change filters. We, adjust belts and lube motors and fan bearings and et cetera, and check the overall safety of the equipment and make sure that it's functioning as efficient as possible.
Okay, say you go in there and you see there's a problem with either the heating, the boiler system, for example. So how does it go from there? What do? You say, okay, this is looking problematic. How do you bring that up to the strata, or how does it go about?
Okay, so I come across a boiler that's having some issues. I'll take it apart, and then we do a regular checklist. We go through certain things I want to look at to make sure that boiler is running safely and efficiently. And when I find something wrong, I'm going to write it up. I'm going to write a report on it, and I'm going to, with that, I'm going to report that to the strata. Usually I go directly to the property manager. And
that's Drew, for example, right?
Exactly. If it's something minor, like a boiler needs a cleaning, I'll give them a call and I'll say, this boiler has got flame rollout right now, and I think we need to take care of this right today. It's going to be 4 hours for me to clean this. Can I get a go-ahead to do this right now so that we avoid basically a catastrophic failure?
Mm-hmm.
and us having, the boiler down for the night, no hot water or no heat, whatever that may be. If it's something that, say, for instance, the refractory, which is something common that we run across, the refractory needs to be changed in a boiler. A lot of times refractories are 4 to 6 weeks away, to be delivered.
What's a special part?
Special parts, right? Unfortunately, everything seems to be back east, down south somewhere, right? Nobody seems to keep everything in stock anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
On some of the things that you need there, right? So we go through that, and then we'll put a proper quote into it, and then we'll just wait for a response. Sometimes it's really expensive, and they'll have to go to the strata to get approval first, which may be in 3 months.
Right.
But depending on how much of a priority it is at the time, right?
So what's your advice, I guess, you being on the front line seeing this stuff? Is summertime the time you should be doing the boiler work?
Absolutely. For heating boilers, yes, you're going to want to do your big maintenance and repairs and such during the summertime. For domestic hot water boilers, which we see a lot more of out there, that's year round. You need hot water all the time, but there's usually more than one boiler, so we can shut one down while we work on the other.
I just have a technical question for you. We know these new systems you can get for your house where you have a boiler for the hot water to heat your home, like maybe you have radiant in-floor heating, for example,
Yes.
and then that also heats the hot water for your shower. Do you get that in buildings? Is it one sort of common hot water source, or are they two separate systems, one for hot water for your sink and one for hot water for heat?
They usually are mostly separated. We like it to be separated because if your heating boiler goes down, you've got no hot water.
And we might have your gas fireplace anyway, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we don't see that. We do see that in older systems. Nowadays, we separate it, and a lot of times heating in multi-unit buildings is electric now too, right? So we're mostly dealing with
hot water.
with domestic hot water.
Now here's a question, Drew, for you. In most stratas, is the hot water common? Or do you get some buildings where you have your own hot water tank?
In most condos, it's common.
Mm-hmm.
Townhouses, it'll be individual
hot water
Yeah,
tanks.
yeah, electric or gas. But in most condos, it's my experience, it's a common system.
All right. So, in your expert advice, and you see these condo buildings, maybe some of them are 50 years old now, 40 years old. How long does a boiler last? Like, I mean, you're going in, you're doing the regular maintenance, but I mean, where are you in the timeline? Typically, if you're in a building that's 20 years old.
Okay, well, boilers last 20, like should last at least 20 years old. If it's well maintained, and it was installed correctly and sized correctly in the first place, then it should last at least 20 years.
So when you have a council and you say, you know, it's been 15 years since we had the boiler changed, you're still got some life.
You still got some life, yeah.
Because most people don't think things last that long.
Well, exactly. But the key is the maintenance. That's the biggest point. If we don't do this maintenance on a regular basis, then things deteriorate very quickly, and you might not get 10 years out of a boiler if it's not maintained. And we find that a lot.
So what typically goes wrong with a boiler? I mean, as far as I understand it, you've got these heating elements, the gas underneath.
Yes.
And then the heat rises through the water.
Yes, it goes through a heat exchanger.
Yeah, so the hot water is in the pipes there, and then that's pumped through the system.
Yes.
So what typically goes wrong? It's a very simple, boilers are quite simple, really, aren't they?
Well, the standard boilers are quite simple. Yes, and what we find with the standard type boilers, the older boilers, atmospheric boilers and such, if we get bad combustion, what we get is that the heat exchangers start to plug up, and once they plug up,
carbon, right? It's
with carbon, etc. And they're like a radiator, so they've got fins and such. So it doesn't take much to start to clog them up. When they clog up, then the heat can't go through and up through the chimney to the atmosphere. So what happens then is the boilers start to, in the fire chamber, start to overheat. Then you get cracking of the refractory, and then the burners warp. The actual box of the boiler will start to warp.
But then you have carbon monoxide issues, right?
Then you have backdrafting, and sometimes you have flame rollout.
So that means that there's flames coming out the front.
Flames rolling right out the front, yeah.
Scary.
And occasionally I've gone to a few boiler jobs where I get there, the refractory had cracked because of the heat, and there's actually 2 feet of flame pouring out the back of the boiler.
Wow.
So that's an automatic red tag.
The reason I know all of this is because I have a 100-year-old house. I don't have a 100-year-old boiler, but I do have a boiler hot water rad system in my house, and I had several of these issues come up with my super hot boiler.
Yep.
And so it was fine. I mean, I have a friend who's a similar kind of work as you, came and cleaned it all out, and it was clogging up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't able to vent and losing a lot of efficiency too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So what happens when it's time for the boiler to be replaced? Okay, you've got different levels of boilers, right? So you have to maybe put a quote in and say, do you get the bronze, the silver, and the gold boiler? Is that typically how it works?
Well, it's typically you're gonna be choosing with like if you have an atmospheric boiler, just a standard boiler, an older boiler, and you're going to be replacing that, you have choices of whether you want to replace it with a standard boiler, which is about 80% efficient.
That means that so the natural gas you're getting heat out of 80% of it.
Correct.
20% of it is wasted.
20% of it's going right out the chimney.
Okay.
So and
that's probably my boiler.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
See that money going.
And then we go into the high efficiency boilers, which are condensing boilers or almost condensing boilers, and those are utilizing almost all the heat. We're taking right up to 97% and even higher in some cases.
So that means of that gigajoule of natural gas, you're getting almost 100% of its energy
absolutely
out of there.
They're even taking the heat out of the exhaust and utilizing it into the system.
Right. So that's the way to go, I guess.
That's the way to go. It is more expensive up front to put this in, and they do require some more maintenance. And
are there pros and cons to switching to a high efficiency version?
Absolutely. Well, first off, the efficiency is the biggest one, right?
You get better bang for your buck, literally.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to save some money on your gas bill for sure. How long is it going to take you to pay that back is a math calculation. It's a math calculation. The physical size of it. We have boilers in some of the older buildings in downtown Vancouver that are, 10 feet high and 30 feet long.
Wow.
And we're replacing that with something that's 4 feet wide, 6 feet long, and 5 feet tall.
Wow.
So the footprint is a huge thing. So if space is an issue, that's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that are really important, for that. And mostly it's going to be saving gas, which is better for the environment and everything, right? And your pocketbook, of course.
So I guess if you're a long-term resident, you want that efficiency over a long period of time. If you're selling the unit next year, like, we'll just get a cheaper boiler.
Absolutely. And there's, both boilers are good.
Yeah.
So, there's no wrong answer to this.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. Good to know. I'm sad to say I have some personal experience with this, but anyway, everything's working perfectly now.
Yeah.
That's Randy Gordon from Ashton Service Group talking about maintaining your maintenance room or your what do they call it? Anyway?
The boiler room or mechanical room.
Mechanical room.
Yeah.
We'll continue our conversation on StrataLife next on CL 650.
Ahead with Experts on Call on CL 650.